Boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. Today we're building a chessboard for a dear friend of mine, so sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy. Now you may think the point of chess is to capture your opponent's king, but in reality it's to make you feel poor and stupid. Personally, I am not notably good at chess, so I figure if I can't play the game, I might as well make the game, because without dumb laborers like myself, the game would be a lot less elegant. Now that I'm done qualifying my stupidity with purpose, let's get into some of the details of this build. The lighter of the two woods you see here is called zebrawood, and it's a mixture of light and dark, which my father's not a fan of, but society is moving forward without him, so I decided to use that instead of maple, which is what everyone traditionally uses, because I don't like doing what everyone traditionally does. And the other darker wood you see there is walnut, and if you know anything about woodwork, walnut is the standard for luxury without dipping into exotics. When gluing boards together like this, you want to alternate wood grain on these. So when you look at the edge of your board, it's either smiling or frowning, and you want to make sure it goes smile, frown, smile, frown. Or, as you see on the zebrawood, the grain is straight up and down, which is called quarter sawn. And that is best case scenario. That wood is going to move the least. It's not going to cup, it's not going to twist. If it does, it'll be minimal. A chessboard is made up of 64 squares, or 8 different strips of wood. So I glued them up 4 and 4 so I could fit them through this planer. Once both halves are flattened, I glue them together in the center, and this way you only have one seam to worry about keeping flat and lined up. If you use pipe clamps to glue up a panel, be sure to alternate top and bottom when it comes to the placement of the clamps. Being the frugal businessman that I am, I cut these pipes out of my friend's basement when he was out of town. Since then, I've learned my lesson and switched to parallel clamps exclusively. If you're new to the channel, this video was made probably a year and a half ago, and here I am just adding voiceover to it, to add a little more perspective. So far, there's been quite a bit of alternating, and that doesn't stop here. You'll see what I mean in a moment during the final glue up. Now, while we're on the note of alternating, I've been asked quite a few times at this point on this channel, how do I come up with these projects? As a young boy in rural Ohio, I didn't have a dad around, so naturally you learn to problem solve. You figure things out, like I figured out how to replace the alternator in the Corsica that my mother had, just by looking at the old one, putting the new one in the exact same spot. So teaching kids problem solving is, I would say, very beneficial to their adulthood. If they retain the information, that is, and the skills. Now, I'm not telling you to leave your wife and kids, obviously, but it certainly worked out in this case. Anyways, the glue up is done. I'm sanding it because I don't have a large enough planer to sand through, and that's just how I did it. No, I didn't show it, but after I glued that up and sanded it, I set it on a shelf for a week, so the glue has time to seep out of the seams. Here I've started on the body of the case that will hold the drawers with the chess pieces and the actual chessboard itself on top once done. Right now we're at the router table, and I'm putting in a 3/4 inch bit so that I can run some rabbets at the edge of this board, which is one of 4 side pieces that make up the structure of this piece. This will hold the drawers, this will hold the tambour doors, so it's pretty crucial I get these pieces right. Here's the part of the video where I ask you a question and hope you engage by leaving a comment so the video does better, while pretending that's not what I'm doing. Can somebody explain to me what the real-world application of being good at chess is, and how do you utilize it? And then how do you specifically utilize it as an individual? Because everyone always says it's strategizing, it's learning how to problem solve this and that, and then you work at Arby's. I want to know what the real-world application is for the layman. Because it seems to just be for politicians to keep us subdued so they can continue to eat children, and we do nothing about it. Which, I mean, you gotta hand it to them. They're doing a great job at being the worst people alive. Now, this isn't me opening an invitation to talk about politics. It's not what I'm talking about. That was more of a joke. So, if you're going to talk about politics, just shut up, because I'm going to block you. As I've said before, this channel is to bring people together, get them interested in woodworking, and maybe make you laugh. It's not to talk about politics and other inflammatory topics that make you inevitably hate other people. Essentially, what I'm asking for is for somebody to talk down to me about chess, which should be pretty easy. It seems to be one of the key components to the game. Alright, back to the wood. Here I'm cutting out a hole for the drawer to slide in and out of, the drawer that holds the pieces. Even though I used purple heart and it did look appealing seeing the drawer through the hole, I still wanted to put a tambour door in the front, just for a little flair, basically. I spent a bit of time off camera making sure the miters were perfect, because that was a very large and in-your-face part of this build would be the corners. And I ended up doing splines in these as well with purple heart, just for a little accent, to tie the drawer to the piece. What I just used there to pin that corner together is a pin nailer. They are 23 gauge pins or nails, and you can barely see them. So you could honestly leave them as they are. You don't have to putty or anything like you would with an 18 gauge. They're very handy for holding together glue joints in lieu of clamping them. I'm cutting some 1/2-inch Baltic birch for the bottom. I needed it to be solid and sturdy without using actual solid wood, just to cut back on expenses. If you're not familiar with Baltic birch, it is plywood with 0 voids on the inside, so it's sheet to sheet of ply with 0 voids. Very rigid material. I wanted to use it on this because it's getting covered in fabric and also holds the door and everything up, essentially. Here I'm cutting another piece of the Baltic birch for the top panel. This sits under the chessboard and above the drawers, and this just creates the box that you need to make tambour doors. Now that those are cut, I'm taking a pencil and marking out the lines of the interior so I can see, when the panel is not attached, the usable space. That's going to dictate where I put my template when I'm running the track for the tambour doors. Here I've taken the offcut of that Baltic birch and I'm making the pattern. This is when I'm going to run my 3/8 inch pattern bit across. In lieu of double-sided tape, I attached the template with pins, and I just ran a slot. The tambour slats themselves were 5/16 of an inch thick, so I got a 3/8 inch bit, so there's plenty of room for them to slide around. And now on to the drawers themselves. This is called Purple Heart, if you've never heard of it, and it's purple. I assume that's why it got its name. I haven't dug too deep. And this board specifically had a twist, so I'm taking that out with a hand plane, and then flipping it over and putting it through the planer, so we have 2 parallel flat sides. These pieces, I believe, are what I would call the skeleton of this piece. It's what is going to receive and house the drawers, and also connect the top and bottom plate to each other. If you're confused what I'm doing here, I've taken 2 pieces of plywood and cut them to the exact same length as the centerpiece there, so we have 2 parallel sides. I needed these to be parallel for the drawers. They will not operate correctly if these are askew or not square. I put a few trim head screws over here on the sides. This will never be seen, and being that this is the core of the project, I figure some actual hardware would be nice. And to cap it all off, I chamfer all 4 corners so the doors do not grab on the backside as they slide by. Just doing a little pre-maintenance so down the road I don't run into issues. I like to think ahead. I'm playing chess while they're playing checkers, is what the dumbest people I've ever met in my life always say. And these people never even met each other. They don't know each other, but they all for some reason flock to that phrase. When I'm doing these projects, I like to think ahead, is what I'm getting at here. And a little foresight, a little thought before the project can save you a lot of heartache. So make sure you iron out all the details before you dive in, I guess is my point here. If you couldn't tell already, those are the tambour slats. They're just in long form, which, if you're doing tambour and you're doing a lot of them, that's how I would suggest finishing them as well. Leave them nice long pieces, finish them, and then cut them to size. It's just the way to do it in my book. These are the Purple Heart splines. These just strengthen up miters. Miters on their own are not very strong. Miters combined with splines are a bit stronger. And they look cooler, which is arguably more important on this project specifically. If you have a nice sharp Japanese saw, cutting these is a real treat. They make a melodic noise as you cut them. Unfortunately for you, 1.5 years ago when I made this video, I put this porno music over it, so you can't really hear it, but you just take my word for it. Here I'm marking out a spot for a brass dowel. Now this is exclusively for aesthetics, and you can tell by the way that it's only 3/8 of an inch deep, so it's not even going to bond the miter together. Which maybe with some hindsight I should have, but things holding up flawlessly to this day. I've played many a drunken games with my good friend Joe, and everything is still as it is in this video. Now I don't remember this part, but I think I'm just squaring up the edge, and do I putty? Yes, I fill all the gaps. So this is the bottom side where there are gaps just from tear out using on the table saw. I don't think the blade was too sharp at the time, so there was a bit of chipping, but that's all on the bottom and it's not a problem. Now onto the drawers themselves. Here I'm marking where the rails go, and the drawers will have a notch in the sides that slide over top of this. It's the oldest way in the book to do drawers, I guess, without buying actual hardware. Yeah, don't forget to wipe your glue, sand your hard edges, and this, along with the tambour slats, get pre-finished before anything else, considering this is on the inside, and the slats need to be finished before they can be cut. On this project, like most of the other ones in the past, I use an oil-based polyurethane. It really brings forward the grain, any characteristics and details in the wood, and it's also a very durable finish once you get a bunch of coats on it. I pulled out the round over bit on this project. I don't remember if it was 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch, but Nice round over on any exposed edges. First off, for safety, and secondly, it just looks much better. These finishing details are what could make or break your project, and that's a very hacky saying, but it is true in this case. Take your time, give the project its due diligence, sand it, put on a video, put on some music, because that could be the difference between making something good and making something great.
You could be on the precipice of excellence, and you're letting short-term laziness get in the way? Come on.
Is what I say to myself before and during sanding any project. We're not perfect. Let he who is without the swirl marks from his random orbital sander cast the first, something funny in a wood shop. Point is, we all do it, and it's time to stop. This is the art of fabric I got from Walmart. I don't know exactly what it's trying to mimic. It's obviously not leather, but it's pretty nice, and it looks cool, so I went with it. As I said, this gets attached to the inside, and I wanted it so when you pull the drawers out, the bottom of the box wasn't Baltic birch plywood. On the inside, it was actually covered in this fabric. To attach the fabric to the wood, I used a spray adhesive. It is a contact cement, and I use a roller to put pressure and actually activate the bond. And then I follow that up with a sharp blade to cut off the extra 34 years ago without asking. Thanks, Mom. If there's anybody out there who makes furniture, like chairs and couches, you're gonna wince at this part probably. This is just what I came up with on the spot to get it done, and in the end it didn't look bad, so, These two blocks here are working to make the drawer open and close. These are press-to-open pistons, and they're pretty nice. Also, at the time, I didn't have access to a drill press, so, give me a break. These little mechanisms are great, very useful. You can drill a hole basically in anything, and, you'll have a press-to-open function to it. I'm using a CA glue, or cyanoacrylate glue, called 2P10 to attach these blocks to the case. It has a strong bond, and it dries almost immediately if you use the activator with it. Now time to move on to the Tambour slats. Here I am cutting them down to their final size. They've already been pre-finished, so this is the last step before assembling the door. Here I'm just measuring to make sure it's the right width for the opening. I grabbed a few delicious pieces of scrap purple heart to make some feet for this board. The wood is delicious, by the way, not the feet. That's nuts. That actually sounds worse somehow. Anyways, I'm putting magnets in these feet, and that's how it's going to be attached to the base. This was just to unify the two pieces and add some stability. With those attached, the chessboard part of this build is basically done. It just needs some sanding and some finish. I sanded the board up to 150 grit and made sure to knock any hard edges off. And then I followed that up with 4 coats of oil-based polyurethane. This one has a tint to it, and it really brings forth the grain and interesting characteristics of the wood. Overall, I'm very pleased with choosing the zebrawood as the lighter wood on this project, because it really stands out while also kind of blending in with the walnut as well. And that's a wrap on the actual chessboard part of the build. Now onto the drawer boxes that go inside and hold the pieces. I was going for a two-tone look here, so I did the front and back with walnut and the 2 side pieces of the box with purple heart. So if you're watching this and you're new to woodworking, or you're interested in getting into woodworking, you will inevitably have to make drawers at some point, and the most crucial parts are making sure your components are parallel and the drawer itself is square when assembled. So take a little extra time and make sure the corresponding pieces are all the same width. These here are the fronts and backs, and I'm just making sure they're all the same length. This will space your sides evenly, and if the carcass or the box you're putting them in is square, they will without question operate as intended. This is a slot meant to receive the bottom. You'll see in the next shot here, I'm trimming off the bottom of the back piece. This is so that the bottom of the drawer itself can slide in and out. Despite my primal affinity for cake, in woodworking, I don't like butt joints, so we're doing a rabbet on these. For the visual appeal alone, a rabbet makes sense. I only do a butt joint if I'm teaching somebody who I know doesn't have access to the tools to do any other kind of joint, or if it's in a scenario where there's no other option, which I don't even know what that scenario would be. I've been reading through the comments recently, and most of them are about the voiceover, and the jokes and just the commentary in general seem to resonate with people. Now, one of the benefits of being a white 30-something in North America is I am entitled legally to a podcast, one podcast, and I'm pretty sure that's in the Constitution. So I'm thinking about starting one, and I would put it on Patreon. It would be free still. Relax, don't grip your chest. I just want to diversify where I'm putting things so it can't all be taken from me at once. And that's a real concern for me because they hate the truth and it's all I've got. So leave a comment if that's something you'd be interested in. So you can see here that back piece is smaller, and you see what I mean now by cutting it off and letting the bottom of the drawer actually slide in. If I hadn't done that, I would had to have put the drawer bottom in before I glued it up, and it would be a permanent fixture, which would make it very hard to finish. Even more so considering I covered the drawer bottom itself with leather. I don't know if I show it in the video, but I measure corner to corner and make sure that my measurements are identical. If they are identical, that means you have a square box. When I say square, I mean all the interior angles are 90 degrees. The finishing on this project has been in various different steps and kind of chaotic and all over the place, but at this point, most of everything has finish on it, or at least a few coats. Here I've taken 400 grit sandpaper, and I'm just knocking down any of the fuzz, the grain of the wood. It stands up when it gets moisture on it, which is very relatable. Anyways, you have to go back through with some high grit sandpaper and knock the wood grain down if you want a smooth finish. Here I'm cutting down genuine leather strips for the backs of the tambour doors. Most people use canvas for these whenever they're doing a tambour door, but I've always used leather, just for the appeal basically. If you use the right adhesive, it holds just as strong, but it just looks better. And if it's something someone's going to see, why not make it look nice? That being said, in this case, you're not going to see this, but I guess old habits die quick? I don't know the saying, but you know what I'm getting at. Back to the drawers for a little bit. This is the way I came up with having something on the back side of the drawer, so when I drill through, there's no tear out on the inside. At this point in the build, I didn't know if the push to open was going to be enough to bring the drawer forward so that you could actually get a grasp on it. So this is just somewhere to stick your finger, basically. Pause. After putting a chamfer on the inside of those finger holes, so that it's smooth when you open it, I did a nice sanding on everything that was left, at least. I believe everything minus the drawers had finish on it at this point. Here I'm laying out spacing for the magnets. I placed the top of the base upside down on the bottom of the chessboard and drilled the holes through both so that the magnets in the top of the base and the bottom of the feet lined up. I got these magnets from Amazon. I will leave those linked in the description. If you buy from the link that I put down there, it'll help the channel out. I also have drawings on my website that go along with some tutorial videos that I've done on this channel. If you want to support the channel but you don't want to spend any money, I absolutely hear you. Just leave a comment. Share it with a friend, subscribe, you know all the things. Here I'm putting the final coats on everything with this oil-based polyurethane, and everything's looking pretty good. Yeah, look at that figuring on that purple heart. Beautiful. It's easy to get overwhelmed when doing a project with this many moving parts, so I like to just focus on the task at hand. And the next task is putting slots in the sides of the drawers. I'm using a 3/4 inch router bit here, and I'm just putting a slot in the same spot that the track is in the actual base. The strips I used for the track in the base are a little smaller than 3/4 of an inch, so I have some wiggle room. If you make them too snug, it goes without saying, there will be points of friction and it might bind. Thankfully, that's not the case here. Beautiful. Now to install the press-to-open pistons. You can see this one is at the top of the block. The one on the other side is at the bottom of the block, and I did that so that when I drilled through that center divider there, they don't cross paths. They're staggered. Here are the pistons in motion if you were confused as to what they did. In the tip of that piston is a magnet, and there's a magnetic plate that goes on the back side of the drawer, and that is how the drawer stays tucked in. In an effort to avoid having visible screws on the bottom side of this unit, I decided to go with L brackets on the interior. I did think of this in advance, and that's why there is room on either side of the divider for these brackets. Here's a few shots of the body before the top is on, and you can't see any of this. When it comes to attaching the top, I just did threaded inserts and some furniture bolts through the actual top plate itself. This way, if anything needs adjusted, I can still take the top off, consensually of course, and the only time you'll ever see those bolts is if you take the board off the base. And if you do, it still looks nice, so I think it was the right way to go. And yes, I realized that was quite a messy drill bit to use for that, but I didn't have a sharp enough Forstner bit in the right size at the time. Now time for a dry run with the Tambour door, just to verify that it works. And it does. The knob that's on there is just temporary, by the way. That's not the final one. I put that there so that I couldn't lose the door in the body of the case. This is a leather punch. I'm using it to stamp out the hole for the furniture bolt to attach the top to the bottom. I would always advise to punch the hole out before you drill through something because it leaves a ratty edge if you don't. Here, I'm installing the magnets in the underside of the top. Make sure that when you're putting magnets in somewhere, that they are facing the right direction. If they need to be attracted to a specific magnet, make sure you put the right face to the right face. Otherwise, you're going to be taking things apart. I was quite relieved when I put the top on that the door just works without me having to tweak anything. That was kind of nice. If you're one of the snobs that likes to shame people for buying things from stores like Walmart, look at that fabric on the top and tell me that doesn't look great. I put some paste wax in the side track of the drawers and in the track for the tambour slats as well, and this just helps reduce friction. As we draw closer to the end of the build, it's time to start putting on the details. These are the magnets in the feet. I do, as you see at the bottom of the screen there, cover these with little pieces of leather. I don't like to see magnets if I don't have to. And these don't really necessarily have to hold super strong, they just have to hold it in place. Now that those are installed, all that's left are the leather bottoms. And no offense to the gay community, I'm talking about the drawer bottoms themselves. These get covered in leather, and this is just a nice little touch. I don't want to hear chess pieces, rolling around, hitting plywood. I also don't want to see plywood, actually, so that's an even better reason. I cut it with a nice sharp knife and used a spray-on contact adhesive. And applying the pressure creates the bond, basically. So, not much to be said there. Smooth fit, first try. No big deal. After 16, 17 years doing this, it better be. And that's that. If you can't play it, make it. If you've caught any of the other videos from this channel, you know I like to do these little sketches. They're mainly for me. I don't know if anybody likes them that much, but it's just an extra little something to put in there. Now you can see there, those are Dubrovnik pieces. I did not make pieces for this board because I'm not good at turning wood on a lathe. So, Joey here, good friend of mine, went out and bought those, and they match the board pretty well. I would like to, in the near future, make a Purple Heart and Wenge board and make the pieces out of Purple Heart and Wenge as well. I just need to get a hold of a lathe first and have the time. If you've been watching the channel for a while, these are just older videos with voiceover added to them because I'm currently in the middle of a large project. But once that's wrapped up, we'll be back to having new videos. I'm going to try to do them every 2 to 3 weeks. These take a large amount of work, so you just have to bear with me. Here's the part where I prove to you that I don't know how to play chess, by the way. If you're paying attention to my moves, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yep, all the build-up, all the drama. Is that your phone?
Yeah, I don't know who keeps texting me, man.
I have one piece left. I don't know what the hesitation's about.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it, dude. Hey, good game. I gotta use the bathroom. I'll be right back.
What a performance from Joe there. If you don't know what the sketch was about, a Grandmaster Hans Niemann was accused of doping with suppositories a few years back, so that's what that was about. Lovely. Anyways, we've reached the end of the video. If you enjoyed, you know the button to hit. I have drawings available on my website. If you're interested, there's videos on this channel that'll walk you through it with the drawings. And, yeah, that's it. I appreciate you and thank you for being here. Love you. Good night.
Yeah.